Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the 27th day of May, 2022. I'm going to be talking to you about, or actually reading, that is, Chapter 1 of Agenda 21's book. That is The Wrenching Transformation of America. This is produced by the American Policy Center. Let me see if I can give you a copy of what it looks like here so you have an idea. This is Tom DeLuise, director of it. Bear with me here. So let's go back to the page here and let me show you what I'm going to share with you. So let's go here, share deal screen. Okay, this is American Policy Center. This is led by Tom DeLuise. There are other people actually have written chapters on this book, but this is it. So I have not seen it in this shared. I have not seen this, so I'm just going to scribble through here. This is a particular, like Stop the National Heritage Area Act. It's based upon S 1942. So this is the areas intact. American Policy is one of the only organs that fights against the congressional hearings. So that's something you need to be aware of. It looks like we've got some issues here with what I call. Let's see if I can balloon it up. I don't know why it won't do that. Here it comes. So you can see that this seems to be a way of somebody taking more land. So this is you can see this is happening, and it's actually right in my neighborhood. Okay, so I live here in South Carolina, right on across the Savannah River. So you can see this certain thing here. This really is this really concerns me. So I just thought I'd share this with you here, but that's not why I'm involved here. So I was going to show you the copy of what the book looked like. So let's go back in here. Okay, this is the book that I bought. It shows the windmills in the front and with the solar panels in front. The Wrenching Transformation of America. And then here are the particular people who are involved who wrote articles in this particular book. So this book is basically $27. It does actually include the tax in it. So if you have an interest in that, you can get in contact with them, American Policy Center. Look it up. Then this is another book, Activist Handbook, How to Fight Back in Your Community. And there's basically $50 there. I think it says $49.99. Yeah, $49. So anyway, let's get back to what I was going to talk to you about and reading the first part of the chapter in here so you can get an idea of what I'm trying to share with you. So I'm going to be reading chapter 1, the agenda for the 21st century, and you'll see what we call it is a crossroads. And one is economic growth, and the other one is based upon sustainable progress. Okay, proponents sell the concept of sustainable development through familiar, unthreatening words and beautiful pictures. Take a look at the above graphic from Nature magazine. Publication used this image to accompany an article about the glories of sustainable development. Okay, an individual is trying to decide on the proper road to take. So I want to explain something else to you. The WWF, the World Wildlife Project, right? Yeah, is it's not what it's about, folks. It's about they play both sides. They're in the Amazon area. They take whatever's there, oil, whatever's minerals, whatever's there, but they come along and say, we're here trying to help out such and such. You see this advertisements on everywhere. We're trying to help the people in Amazon, such and such. When in reality, they're just simply collecting your money. They're not doing anything. They're just stealing from you. Okay? You need to be aware of that. So the WWF is one of them. There are all these groups that the Aspen Center for such and such. These organizations have tons and tons of money. Okay? Anyway, an individual is trying to decide on the proper road to take. The road leading to the left heads towards an ugly gray city with belching smokestacks. It is clearly marked economic growth. The road leading to the right towards a beautiful rural landscape of tall trees and lush green grass is boldly marked sustainable progress. This is a rosy picture of what they want you to see, but you can't have one or the other, folks. You see, they again do this trick. It's always dividing you. Okay, this is what they do. We could actually have both. Okay, we actually had both at one time in this country. We did have economic growth. We also had areas that basically were pristine areas of the country. Okay, let's continue on. What is missing is the utopian land of sustainable development. There are no homes, no jobs, and no human activity. That's their perspective. That's what the Georgia Guidestones also preach. And again, I'm not trying to preach any fear porn here. I'm just making aware of what their plan is, according to this book. In reality, the description above is an honest representation of the agenda for the 21st century, with one major exception, and that is in the sustainable community for the future where humans are to reside, they will look more like the high-rise buildings from the left. It's all the quote-unquote, without smokestacks, of course, rather the glassy pictures of the right, that is Agenda 21. And so what I'm talking about is this, go back to the Soviet Union. Most people, many people lived in the Soviet Union in the large cities in Soviet Union, which is former now as Russia. They lived in these things, and they were high apartments up in the city. They're one of the most ugly buildings you could actually build. They're basically copycats, Well, they're actually doing that in California right now. They call them stack them. They're stacking what I call places for people to live in Southern California. There's a guy who's actually been doing documentation in the city of San Diego and explaining all this. It's not, this is all people also being told to, we need to scale back and live in a smaller residence, such and such. They're conditioning you. Same thing with your cars. They've been doing that for over 40, 50 years per se. So let's keep on going. With one major, proponents believe that the free enterprise system that creates factories, jobs, housing, and luxury beyond more extensive upsets their vision of a well-oriented society. If you think that may be overstated, then consider the facts. In 2012, the United Nations held a 20th anniversary event to celebrate their original introduction to Agenda 21 in 1992. At this event called Rio Plus 20, several speakers presented the idea of zero economic growth. This idea suggests zero factories, zero housing, and zero human activity. If you recall, one of the first things that Obama did when he came to office, he made it very clear that he was going to destroy the coal industry. Okay. So this is what people are failed to see, and that's what happened. There is hardly any coal industry here, except the coal industry that basically is now shipping our coal to China. That's what's happening. None of it's actually hardly being used here in America anymore. Okay, let's continue. But how do they get us to accept this systematic demise of our society? Essentially, this graphic and many more like it is designed to create instant Pavlovian knee-jerk reaction to any kind of human development that is almost always depicted as damaging to the environment. People have been so conditioned that when you begin to mention the environment, their eyes start to glare over and their ability to reason shuts down. And so here we are, more than 20 years later, after Agenda 21 came on the scene of the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. We are witnessing an unbelievable transformation of human society that is leading to shortages, sacrifices, higher prices for goods. That's what we're seeing. And services, and massive government intrusion in our lives. How has this been accomplished? Well, in 1993, in order to bring the United States into compliance with the Constant History Blueprint for the Reconstruction of Human Development, called Agenda 21, President Bill Clinton created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. So they create offices, more people working in government positions, nothing but bureaucracy. With great fanfare, the council issued a comprehensive report containing all the guidelines on how our government was to be reinvented under sustainable development. Those guidelines were created to direct policy for every single federal agency, state government, and local community government. However, the policies are written using indirect language that seems to dance around its true intention. While it sounds reasonable and non-threatening on the surface, one gets the feeling that something's important is missing. Of course it is. It's what their whole idea is. The concept seems difficult to grasp, thus making it difficult to argue unless one understands the full agenda. For example, here is the definition of sustainable community from the 1996 report of the President's Council on Sustainable Development. This is their definition. Sustainable communities encourage people to work together to create a healthy communities where natural resources and historical resources are preserved. Jobs are available, sprout is contained, neighborhoods are secure, education is lifelong, transportation and healthcare are accessible, and all citizens have opportunities to improve the quality of their lives. Notice the language used carefully selected to sound positive, to paint image of stability and normalcy, jobs, education, history, health, opportunity, all the things needed for a stable, happy community. Nothing to argue here, right? Nothing to fear. To fully understand the meaning of this definition, one must break down the language and ask key questions. In other words, you need to be curious about it. What's going on here? So most importantly, one must ask, how do you intend to achieve these goals? To translate the above definition of sustainable community in order to understand its true meaning and consequences on American everyday community, life will take this entire report. That is my mission, and is also no easy task. Let's begin by taking each of these glowing ideas one at a time. How do we put such ideas into action? What are the consequences? Are we better off? Is the environment better off? Sustainable communities encourage people to work together. There certainly are members of our society who take the whole sustainable agenda to heart and love to get involved in improving their community. They clean out their riverbanks, collect trash along the roadways, recycle, watch their thermostats, and ride their bikes whenever possible. Good for them. That is their decision, and they are free to make it. But there are others who may have a different vision of how they want to live. Perhaps they don't agree with the dire predictions about environmental Armageddon. How do they fit in the agenda for the 21st century? They are dealt with. Their children in the public schools are plummeted with the political correctness of being properly environmental students. Guilt plays a huge part in their indoctrinations. Of course it is. Guilt is always blame and shame. They never stop this, folks. They do it in religion. They do it every perspective. It's just the same old game. They just keep playing it, and most people are unaware of it and just keep going, following down the road, and just don't want to be involved. Don't see what's going on. Don't want to know. It is necessary so future generations will be prepared to work together in their communities. In addition, in many schools now, the children are required to fulfill a certain number of hours in community service in order to qualify for their diploma. In a sustainable world, proper attitudes is at least as important as scholarship. Today's curriculum to ensure proper citizenship is called Common Core. It is the curriculum of Agenda 21 as intended to be lifelong. Cooperation from adult citizens is just as structural in the past. Public meetings to discuss new policy were based on the guidelines called the Robert Rules of Order, through which everyone got a fair share or a fair chance to have their own say, and then took a vote on the matter. Today, we have facilitators. That's the key word. They're there to sell their untruth. I've already experienced this before in my life. Trained in psychology to ensure that they lead their gathering in exactly the direction that they want. They needed that basically in the meeting will be believed. For the predetermined and desired outcome. If the facilitator is really good at his job, everyone in the meeting will believe the outcome was his or her own idea. Wow. Those in charge hailed the meeting as a huge success in which everyone in the community worked together to set these plans in place. Well, yeah, I was involved in one of those, and they never even got back to me. They never communicated with me or anything. It was all a sham. That's all it is, folks. It's a sham. To create healthy communities. This can mean many things. Healthy. We see the growing power of the food police today, who have declared many things in our diet as unhealthy. We see the mayor of New York declaring large sodas unhealthy and to ban their sale. We see fast food restaurants picket for selling fries made with grease or hamburgers that are deemed almost animal cruelty by animal rights advocates. There are mandatory vaccinations which children cannot enter school, and parents, when refuse to comply, are charged with child abuse. So if that's not dictatorship, folks, this is for the greater good. Okay? It's not about you and me as an individual trying to stand and do what's right. Local governments enforce grand comprehensive plans designed to pack and stack people on top of each other in massive high-rise buildings. Is that what they mean by healthy? History would show that forcing people into massive containers reduces qualities of life, spread disease, and promote violence. These are not healthy communities. The Russians called them gulags. Natural resources are preserved. The fear is that our consumption will bring shortage of natural resources, and so the sustainable plan is to erect endless forests of windmills. That is the natural way we're told. Yes, I just recently read 2 weeks ago, or less than that we're going to build windmills into the ocean off the coast of New Jersey and New York. So this is going to cost astronomical money, and this is the whole deal, folks. It will never be what they claim it's going to be. They will spend money on top of money on top of money, and it will not get any better. It will continue to get worse. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's what their plan is. And these corporations, what we call startup companies, that are involved in this, are there. They're there to get the money. Okay? They don't have any tried or true deals. It's about eliminating the power and energy you have now to basically be a system that's haphazardly that will never be dependable. So let's continue on. Okay, so the fear is that consumption will bring shortages. We already read that. Men will live on the surface of the earth doing no harm. Of course, they never seem to mention that the massive wind turbines and take more energy to build them than they will ever generate in their lifetime. Correct. It's just foolishness. In addition, to bring the power out online so it can be used by society requiring a massive infrastructure of wires, cement, and roads. While one nuclear plant located on 10 acres can supply enough energy for a massive city, wind power would require thousands of acres to clear cut cement wastelands. Power then becomes unstable, and unreliable, causing homes to grow cold or hot. This is not healthy for our communities. Moreover, there's the side effect of millions of birds being chopped up into turbines, including endangered raptors like eagles. They call that environmentally sound. The more questions come to mind as we look away resources for future generations. At what point will these locked away resources ever be allowed to be used by our society and so afraid of itself? Won't there always be a future generation that might need them? Meanwhile, the science keeps discovering that the dire prediction of resources depletions are outrageously overblown. Of course it is. It's fear. It's all fear. It's also fear porn. So let's continue on here. Recently been discovered that the United States has the largest oil and gas supplies in the world. Hydraulic fracturing is benign American technology that is ecologically sound, enormously advantaged, but it has been deemed unsustainable by the sustainable who quickly oppose any source of cheap energy. Yet fracking stretches our energy resources several hundred years into the future. That would certainly give science ample time to come up with new technology also. I don't know if I agree with that statement by him, okay? Historical resources are preserved. Frankly, I have no idea what a historical resource is. Yeah, they just create these words, you know what I mean? But I do know that sustainabilists prey on American love of history as an excuse to lock away any land where once a person from the past may have taken a walk. They then use the land to generate massive federal grants so planners can stop development even in towns where nothing of historical significance ever occurred. It is a growth industry in the world of sustainable lockaways. Jobs are available. What most magically happened in sustainable communities to create jobs that are not there yet. The government does not create jobs, never has, folks. Creative, driven, free people create jobs to fill needs they have discovered. No government-controlled economy would ever have created a factory that makes drink umbrellas or little pieces of plastic that go onto the ends of your shoelaces. Bureaucrats don't think that way. They only think in terms of need and urgency. The bare minimum. Luxury is never part of the government plan. The fact is, sustainable development is one of the biggest killer of jobs. Let me continue. Rules and regulations make it near impossible for many companies to survive. EPA, by enforcing sustainable policies, is killing power plants, mines, farms, and even, as we recently announced, bullet factories. They are destroying the economy of whole states. So where will these glorious sustainable jobs come from? Well, maybe it's government jobs, you see. So sprawl is contained. In other words, they don't want urban sprawl. You see, this is all contained you. Evil sprawl, those areas of community growth where people run to escape the mega cities. In every case, those new homes and their shining developments are a place where a family first opened the front door with smiles on their faces because this was their home. They have backyards where the kids can play. They have a real sense of community, and those terrible strip malls that spring up around the new developments that supply goods and services for the new residents also create jobs and enhance the economy. Stack and pack cities are not livable if you actually believe in fresh air and a place for the kids to play. Cities are full of government, drugs, disease, inefficient use of energy and resources. Due to sustainabilists focus on stopping murders by drug cartels and beating by gangs of illegal aliens. You never seem to hear anything about their plan, you see. They don't go into specifics, folks. They never have. It's all this glorious, whole as things like this. It's going to be a new heaven, so to speak, when reality is going to be a hell. All these facts were actually exposed in a report by the American Planning Association, APA, on the effects of smart growth. The report reveals that it does not work. Nevertheless, this fact does not change the APA's policy because smart growth is full of government grants. That's right. It's all sponsored works. This is where people can make killings. It doesn't matter how good the thing works. They're not interested in that. It's about putting it deep in your pockets here, folks. This is what it is. And to destroy the rest of what is left for people to survive on. Nonetheless, this fact has not changed the APA's policies since small growth is full of government grants. That is the real game sustainable income for the non-governmental organizations. So what he's talking about is the NGOs. Okay? NGOs basically are what we call bureaucracy gone wild. In other words, these people will never be elected. They just simply are appointed, and they just have power over almost everything, you see, and they get their ways in simply say, oh, we're being benign and helping you out, such and such. Eventually that will cease to be. But they're given tons and tons of money, see, to do these things. Neighborhoods are secure. How's that done? Well, massive police control, cameras on every corner, gun control, TSA in the subway and bus stations, NSA listening in on every conversation and computer keystroke. Security over privacy and individual choice. Certainly, there is no sustainable freedom in such a scheme. Transportation is accessible. This one is easy. Public transportation, trains for long distance, and hikes and bikes for the quick run to the store. No cars. You will rarely leave the neighborhood. Imagine the hassle involved in taking a family on a trip to the beach using inconvenient train schedules, which really there's no way you can even get on a train to even go to the beach, folks. Not here in South Carolina. It's ridiculous. Of course, people flocking to the beach is already deemed to be unsustainable, so you won't need to imagine it. Just read about it in a history book. Healthcare accessibility. Well, we used to have accessible healthcare, then the government not got into the game. Perhaps you think this is unfair to mention Obamacare in a report about sustainable development. Simply Google sustainable medicine to find out more than 5,850,000 references on the subject, and you will discover almost all the provisions of Obamacare. Let me go back further than what he talks about here, Obamacare. It goes further back, folks. I lived in the day when there were county hospitals in almost every county in the state, okay? When the county hospital was run, it was not a corporation per se. It was there to basically be in the black, but it was not there to charge you exorbitant prices for medical care, okay? And so guess who benefits from this? I'll tell you who benefits. All the companies based upon what we call corporations who own these hospitals. So it's this whole thing going on and on with corporations. So how did this got in? Well, Nixon promised some certain people if he gets elected, he would eventually do away with what we call this county hospitals. Well, so when I came here in Aiken in 1975, when in 1976 or 77, the county hospital was gone. In other words, they closed it down, and HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, opened up a hospital here in Aiken. Okay? And costs have gone up because this is a corporation. They claim they don't have enough money or this and that. Yet, guess who pays for the bill? The government pays for the bill because most people can't afford it. So that's already socialism. Okay? All citizens have the opportunity to improve the quality of their lives. Another statement. Really? What part above leads to improvement of the quality of life? We used to call it tyranny. Now we call it quality of life. As George Orwell said in his landmark book, 1984, it is called doublespeak. Look around you now, and the sustainable policies is being forced upon you. American economy is a shamrocks. It is. And now it's even far worse. Look around. This was probably published, I'm thinking, 5 or 6 years ago. Let's take it back. Yeah, 2016, the book was published. So this is 6 years later. Okay. So cost of everything, especially healthcare, food, and industry are skyrocketing. These industries are the very first to be impacted by sustainable development. How will it improve under a policy of planned shortages and locked away resources? What or who are they counting on to pull this out? Eventually, even the most determined producers give up when enough roadblocks are put in their way. Yeah, this whole plan is simply destroying people's lives. The sustainabilists, see, they've got people here enormously bought into the system that they get paid to do harm to other people. Okay, and that's natural law. So those that do this harm are actually not obeying anything but their own greed to rule over people. So the statements are seemingly innocent sounding descriptions to illustrate their plans for us. They deny that they do this intentionally, and anyone who calls them out is labeled a fringe nut. Of course, they always do that. However, there's another way to say it. A much older description of sustainability development that explains the motivation behind the policy in a much more direct manner from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, if you recognize this quote when you fully understand the true nature of sustainable development. What is sustainable development now? I keep using the term sustainable development, but what is it? In short, sustainable development is the policy for the implementation of Agenda 21. You hear the terms used every day, but few know what it really means. I've spent the past 20 years studying every facet of this new political agenda. It affects our businesses, our public education system, our personal property, and our individual lives. Interesting, this is not a Republican or Democrat issue, nor is it a liberal conservative. The agenda is being implemented on a purely bipartisan plan. So you can forget that, folks, okay? The Republicans are not going to stop it, neither are the Democrats, okay? It is now the official policy of the United States, put in force by literally every department of the government. No one even passed this stuff, folks, okay? That's what you have to understand. It is the official policy of every state government and nearly every city, town, and county in the nation. Most people immediately equate sustainable development with environmental policy. Concern for the environment is the reason most often give for the implementation of this process. Land use control is at the heart of sustainable development policies. However, understanding sustainable development to be simply good environmental stewardship is a serious and dangerous mistake. The term sustainable development was born on the pages of Our Common Future, the official report of the 1987 United Nations World Commission on Environmental and Development, UNCED, authored by GRO, G-R-O, Harlem, H-A-R-L-E-M, Brundtland, B-R-U-N-D-T-L-A-N-D, Vice President of the World Socialist Party. Since its publication, the world has never been the same. Most people don't know that. I think this guy was from, I'm guessing, either Denmark or Netherlands. It has that same ring of that name. He's no longer living as far as I remember. So the term appeared in full force in 1992 as a United Nations initiative called the UN Sustainable Development Agenda 21, as it has become known around the world simply Agenda 21. When it was unveiled in 1992, UNCED ballyhooed as the Earth Summit. In fact, the Earth Summit was one of the provisions called for in the Brundtland, that's just the name, I'll spell it, B-R-U-N-D-T-L-A-N-D report, as a means of implementing sustainable development around the world. More than 178 nations, that's right, nations adopted Agenda 21 as official policy. President George H.W. Bush was the signature for the United States. Now, see, this wasn't even passed, okay? This was not even implemented what we call Congress. It was just one person, a dictator decides, I'm going to do this no matter what. As presented by his proponents, the following is the most common definition of sustainable development. Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their own needs. Again, this simple worded, positive sounding definition hides an agenda that can only lead to breathtaking transformation of society. According to its advocates, to achieve the goal of meeting today's needs without compromising the needs of the future requires massive amount of land and natural resources to be permanently locked away from use. So this is why they are going to ban you on certain properties. Okay. You do know here in the United States that pretty much all U.S. national forests and parks are actually owned by the United Nations. It's part of their biosphere program. Okay? That's just my interjection of that. In short, sustainable development requires a complete transformation of American society, our system of justice, our economic system, our ability to make individual life choices such as careers, family life, and the location of our homes. This is the wrenching transformation of society that Al Gore refers to in his book, Earth in the Balance. Nice ring, isn't it? And Gore, these people will profit off this, folks. In fact, they are. These are maniacs. These people are determined to get their way. They want to rule because they're psychologically messed up. Okay, that's just my interjection. Okay. He claims that this radical reorganization of human existence on Earth is necessary in order to cleanse our society purported evils of the 20th century industrial revolution. Let me explain something to you real quick here about this. This is what's going on. This is my interjection. The industrial revolution allowed these corporations to eventually become very large. And what we have now is very few. We don't have much competition in industry anymore, folks. That's it. Look at your grocery stores, and they're gradually being bought up. Anything of that nature is being bought up by a bigger company than the one before. This was a whole plan that that we created our own hell. What I mean by that simply is we have created devices like computers and all this technology that there won't be any use for man at all. There won't be any jobs for people. That's why you see what we call driverless cars, driverless trucks in the future. In fact, they're talking about it big time now. And I know that Uber, or whatever it's called, is already rolling it out. They don't have drivers anymore. See, this is all done on purpose, folks. This is not by accident at all. At all. Nowhere near it. It's to profit them. So now they have a robotic way of controlling us. This is a way of destroying humanity. You see? You follow what I'm saying? So I'll continue. Again, this is not about fear porn. This is actually what their plans are. No one would spend their time writing a book and sharing this with other people. You understand? Okay? It's a warning to mankind that things are not so glorious in the future. We must wake up, or I should say, become aware. So, Al Gore's words are powerful, should concern anyone trying to make their way in our modern world. The rules are changing, and a new power elite is coming to power. Perhaps you're beginning to notice such changes as you go about your daily routine, but having not understood where these charges or changes are taking place. And the ideas behind them are coming from sustainable development papers, guidelines, and regulations are imposed upon us daily. They're not even making us aware of what they're doing. They're just doing it. Sustainable development imposes upon our public education system to prepare our children to be proper global citizens. It's no longer about national citizens. It's not about country citizens. It's not about state citizens, which citizens is another word that we can talk about later. Living in a sustainable world. Today, that curriculum is called Common Core. So this whole idea is a radical transformation of all society. So sustainable development imposes upon our economy to create a public and private partnership. Yes, at my county library, there's a public-private partnership right there. There are corporations, there are companies, corporations in my county who have given up money to get their name on their rooms or whatever. They're buying a public structure. It was paid for by the taxpayers. You see, this is how they take over. Eventually, there won't be any books that will warn you about this out there. That will be eventually their book burning deal. Sustainable development imposes upon our economy to create public-private partnerships, PPP, between business and government, making sure businesses becomes a tool to help implement their policies. Yes, that's what it's about. I see it already here in my community, and people are just not aware of it. They don't understand what's going on right before their eyes. Sustainable development imposes upon the environment, leading to controls on private property and businesses. Unsustainable development and environmental protection becomes the excuse for all policy decisions, regardless of whether regardless of the environment would even be affected. It's called a precautionist principle. It forces long delays and massive studies over what might happen if all the stars are properly aligned with the moon on any given day of the week before deciding if a policy or business plan is a danger to the environment. In short, what they're saying, the precautionary principle is a killer of economy, especially when the final decision is being made by boards, panels, and councils armed with very specific and anti-business bias. Sustainable development imposes upon our health care. The new drive against obesity is leading directly towards controls of what we eat. Well, the reason why obesity takes place, folks, is because the food, they created this. The food is not worth eating. And when people eat food, it's not really food. What happens simply is they get sick or they die. They don't care. Who owns the most property in this country, you see? The current debate on rational health care and death clauses is right out of the sustainable playbook, as it considers older people and the sick to be no longer valuable resources to society. Google sustainable medicine, and you will find all of their many parts of Obamacare. Sustainable development imposes upon farming. That's right. Sustainable development policies affect farmers' ability to produce crops by regulating precious chemicals, energy, and water use in the name of environmental protection. Well, ask the people in California. Ask those. There have been farmers that have been closed down because they claim they don't have enough water. When reality simply is this is what you call the most sick bias. Someone gets their way, meaning that basically they force what we call eliminate competition. And that's what they're doing in California at the groves, the oranges, the walnuts. Some people were not able, so they had to plow their whole fields. This is being kept secret, though, folks. Okay. To fully understand the folly of sustainable farming, one should take a good look at current agriculture courses in several colleges. Check out Green Mountain College in Vermont. And an ag symposium that now features the use of OXEN as replacement for non-sustainable tractors. Students are paying for a college education to learn David Crockett farming methods. Need more be said. Sustainable development imposes upon our social, cultural, environmental. Political correctness is controlling immigration policy, multiculturalism, marriage laws, and even restrictions on what we can say in open society. Global acceptable truth, an actual UN-driven concept, dictates the science and the knowledge that we are allowed to pursue. This concept is now at the root of the public education system. So what they're doing is they're brainwashing your kids. This is the whole idea. Okay. Sustained development imposes upon our mobility with emphasis on carpools and public transportation. So we're bad people when we have our own cars. Okay. The expensiveness of gas is a result of sustainable development policies. These policies ban the drilling of oil, especially American oil, in order to create shortages and drive up the price to get us out of our cars. Well, of course it is. The whole idea simply is, I've already done this in a video that deals with what I would call the approach that we have a certain type of oil here in America. But those that want, that is major corporations, oil industry, don't do the exploring here in America anymore because the laws no longer pertain to that. And so they they go after the oil in other countries, which is a different oil. It's a heavier crude instead of a light crude. So we have all this oil in our country, light crude. We have what we call refineries for that particular use. In other words, for light crude. But what we do in this country is we import oil. Why? Because these major corporations like Exxon Mobil, Chevron, all these companies are doing this to make profits, and they don't have to do any type of what I would call putting out money to do research and find where the oil is. Well, we know there's the largest oil pool in the United States, as far as I know of, is in Alaska, but there's probably some others elsewhere. Now, the key is we import that heavy crude oil. So guess what? It's not beneficial for us in some ways. And that's why another thing is what we got with the ethanol. Well, that's part of the corn crop, you see. So that corn could be actually used for eating, is now being used in the refinery part. Okay? So follow me out. Sustainable development upon public safety. New laws and regulations affect our right to privacy. According to sustainable doctrine, the implication of real ID and the creation of total surveillance society using biometrics is necessary to ensure that each citizen is adhering to sustainable policy in daily life. That's dictatorship, folks. That's all that is. They have used fear porn that somehow this whole world is going to come apart and then implement their plan. This is so dastardly evil. It's unbelievable. It is crucial for every American to understand that these issues we face today are not just random concerns that accidentally find their way into the forefront of the political debate. They are interconnected with the policy of sustainable development and the restructuring of our way of life. So that's the conclusion of chapter 1 here tonight. What it's doing simply is that it's eliminating freedom. It's eliminating opportunity for anyone who wants to do what they would like to do, as long as they don't do any harm to anybody. The key is what's happening to us is that they are doing harm to us. And that is against natural law, period. So their law simply is that they see you as inferior and that you must be trained as a rat or a monkey, you see. And in reality, simply is you have less and less freedoms. And then there's this whole mob perspective that most people are not willing to stand up and say, wait a minute. There is a problem with this. This is about total control. This is also a way for the large corporations to, quote unquote, control everything. That's what it's about. So that they can name the price of what they want to do. In other words, they can charge you whatever they want to charge you. And not only that is happening, we're seeing what we call simply the destruction of the dollar on purpose to basically destroy this economy so that it comes down, so that we will no longer be able to be free and be able to we'll be on a world economic deal and the dollar will collapse. Well, this has all been planned. It's all been planned, folks. It was used that way. So as I'm trying to explain to you this is in my own thoughts here, is that they've done this for over probably 60 or 70 years, if not longer. Not just with this whole deal with Agenda 21. They basically poo-poo all this whole issue. And we used to have many oil companies or gasoline companies here in the United States that flourished back in those days. Well, there are not many of them left now, you see. And they've been all bought out or merged. And the greatest evil in some ways is simply the stockholders are all interested in making money. They're not seeing the big picture here. All they're seeing is a small picture of what I would call what's best for me. So that's chapter 1 tonight. If you have any questions, I went through this material pretty quick. We can do this another time. That is chapter 2, which will be in what we call a top-down control, which we'll discuss next time I read this. It's just basically, I'll say just one more thing before I say goodnight. The 3 E's based upon their chapter 2 program is this. It will be, they talk about economic prosperity, they talk about ecological integrity, and social equity. So in reality is that these are their plans, but there's not going to show any fruit in this area, folks. It's not going to produce. And they're showing you also one other thing that stands out to me. They're showing also that your internet connections are no longer reliable. And so that this great technology we now pay for, okay, we pay for to buy something now over the internet when we could actually used to go down to the local hardware store and pick it up. You see what's going on? This whole thing was done on purpose to destroy the economy, local economy. We know that simply that when Walmart goes into a particular town or city, especially a town that has small businesses, they within 2 or 3 years have destroyed all the local companies there that actually sell hardware or plumbing, all these type of supplies that makes that community thrive. And then they come in and cut their costs for these people who no longer can make a living. And Walmart's part of this. They're indeed part of it. Okay. So they've gotten filthy rich in being part of this whole idea of simply they come in and destroy the small towns they're in. And people go there simply saying, try to save money. But also now, simply you got to understand, is that how would I say it? We are not aware of what the destruction is taking place. Look around you and see factories that have been closed, textile, furniture here in the South, but other industries are gone. They're just gone. Buildings are gone. They're just, nobody's working anymore. And I've talked about this before, and I argue with a particular professor in economics, the not smart growth, but what they call, there'll be what they call jobs for these people, what they call service jobs. Well, service jobs never produced anything, folks. For example, here where I live at, during the quote unquote pandemic, or what do you want to call it, what took place was this. The company no longer has an office here. Okay. They no longer have a building here. Okay. So there's a lot less cost in what's going on here. And their prices have gone up. Okay. That's just a simple explanation of what one thing has had happen with the service economy. So I wish you a good night. I appreciate your attention. I hope that I've explained some of the things that I wanted to share with you tonight. And I wish you a good evening and have a good rest. Okay. Thank you for listening. All right, bye-bye.